Um, and Stephen, feel free to take it away.
Okay, yes, thank you, Caitlin, and thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, thumbs up, can we see that? Okay, great. All right, so thanks everyone for coming. So a little bit of an overview about what we'll be talking about. We'll just be diving in pretty basic level, talking about, what is selenium, how is it impacting the Kootenai, what are states doing about it, what rules have they established, and where are we currently, and how can you help? How can you take action for the Kootenai? So kind of to set the scene, there is the Kootenai watershed in relation to Idaho and the Northwest. Up there straddles the border of Canada and the US. A little bit more of a zoomed in look. You can see it there in eastern British Columbia. That's where its headwaters are, and then it crosses the international border on the bottom right side of your screen and flows into Montana, along into Idaho, and then actually loops back up into Canada. Those red dots on your screen, those 5 red dots, are the open pit coal mines run by Teck Resources, and that is the source of selenium leached into the Kootenai watershed. Here are some great pictures of what those coal mines look like. You can see the scale of them. On the bottom there, you can see some very small trucks. So these are massive, massive projects going on in the Elk River Valley of British Columbia. And as you can see, leaching from those mines has been occurring over the last 40 years, since about the 80s. This is in the Elk River in particular, and you can see it's been steadily increasing as operations have continued to grow and grow. So with that, a little bit of background, I think that I'll go ahead and stop sharing the screen and bring in Ellie from ICL to ask her a little bit about what's going on. So Ellie, just first off, what is selenium, and where is it coming from? How is it getting in from those coal mines into the watershed?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So hi, everyone. Super excited to be here collaborating with IRU on this. So a lot of people, I think this is a little bit of a surprising knowledge, but selenium is actually a naturally occurring element. And it's found in the environment, kind of embedded within the geology in a lot of places. And so in this specific watershed, there's a lot of selenium embedded in the geology of southeastern BC, where Teck mines for coals. And so what happens is, because the geology of Southeast BC contains high levels of selenium, when Teck goes in and performs their mining operations, they generate a lot of waste rock from that. And that waste rock contains high levels of selenium. And they don't really have a whole lot of success in getting rid of that waste rock. So they kind of just set it aside, and it accumulates within the environment. And then what happens is eventually it will rain, and that the selenium within the waste rock kind of leaches out of the waste rock, and it ends up in our watershed.
Very interesting. And so how does that selenium impact the Kootenai River?
Yeah, so if we think back to those maps that Stephen shared, all of that selenium in the geology is in Canada. But once it starts leaching from the waste rock, it enters the Elk River in Southeast BC. It flows over the US-BC border into Montana, and then it eventually trickles into Idaho. And so selenium is what we refer to as a Goldilocks element. So if we think back to the Goldilocks fairy tale, you'll remember that like the first bowl of porridge was too cold, I think the second was too hot, and the third was just right. And that's kind of how I like to think about selenium interacting in the environment. So if you have too little selenium in your system, it's not enough. But if you have too much, it can be really toxic. And the other way selenium kind of interacts with the environment is that it bioaccumulates. And so it kind of it gets transferred from smaller animals to larger as it moves its way up the food chain. And so once it gets into the water, it really can interact with and accumulate within the entire ecosystem. And so unfortunately, the Canadian portion of this watershed has reached those more toxic levels of selenium. And we're seeing an impact from that. I think in 2017, there was a population die-off of West Slope cutthroat trout, where about 93% of the population decreased because of Teck's mining operations. And so luckily, those like kind of catastrophic impacts haven't really made their way down into the US portion of this watershed. But because we are downstream from that pollution, we are starting to see some signals that those catastrophic impacts might start occurring here. And so it's really important that we're working to getting out ahead of that instead of playing, trying to solve a catastrophic issue after it's already happened. So in Idaho specifically, the Kootenai River has two recreationally and culturally important species, the Kootenai River white sturgeon, which was listed as endangered in 1994, and it also contains burbot. And so both of these species have experienced declines over the last few decades, but thanks to the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho, they've been really leading the recovery of these species. But unfortunately, these species are coming back and they're thriving, but they're coming back to polluted waters. And so it's really important that we're taking steps now to be preventing that pollution from reaching those catastrophic impacts. If that makes sense. And I think one other thing to note is that within Idaho, we are seeing concentrations of selenium in fish that are above what is legally required. And I think that's really important because it kind of leads us into thinking about like, we have these impacts happening, but what types of protections are in place and could there be better protections in place? So Stephen, do you maybe want to hit on what types of protections are in place now?
Yeah, and kind of starting in Idaho and working our way upstream. In Idaho, the Kootenai River is listed as an impaired body of water under the Clean Water Act. And some of that research that Ellie was mentioning on the Kootenai alerted, Idaho Department of Environmental Quality to the fact that the Kootenai River had high levels of selenium by looking at the tissues of fish and seeing how high the selenium was in that. And so it's listed in Idaho. And if we work up our way upstream to Montana, just recently, Montana passed new selenium limits that are more protective of fish and human health as well. And that was the result of an exhaustive 6-year study. Scientists from Canada, from Montana, many stakeholders had input on the establishment of these new standards. And it was really a big win, the fact that Montana did establish these new protective standards for the Kootenai River as well as Lake Koocanusa, which straddles the Canadian-American border. Ultimately what it is the latest science-based water quality criteria, which is in effect now, and a great step. If we think of, Idaho, then Montana as stepping stones, of course, the ultimate goal is to have regulations in British Columbia to hold tech resources accountable for their breach of water quality standards up there. And so, as we kind of look at where the issue is now, unfortunately, tech has petitioned to overturn those standards that Montana just passed, which jeopardizes all those years of research and collaboration. I think reverting to that old selenium rule would open up a legal can of worms as relates to the Clean Water Act. Not only the Montana-Idaho relationship, but also Canada-US relationship in terms of pollution coming over the border from Canada into the United States. So it'd be a significant step backwards if tech's petition went through, but that's kind of where we are currently, where we have these great standards that were established, but we're kind of backtracking where they're being challenged again by the coal mine responsible for the selenium pollution in the first place. So that is a bit of a high-level overview of where we're at. And actually, this coming Monday, you have an opportunity to take action for the Kootenai River. As I share my screen again. And so the Montana Board of Environmental Resources, which is the body that passed those selenium standards, is having a public hearing on tech's petition to overturn them next Monday, 10 a.m. If you are interested in speaking up for the Kootenai, we have some information there. You can visit the Montana's government website, or we have the Zoom link down there for you. And of course, we'll send it to you afterwards. But that this is kind of a near-term opportunity to use your voice and speak up for healthy fisheries in the Kootenai, and speak to, if you have a relationship with that river or with North Idaho in general, it's a great opportunity to let decision makers know that there are people out there that use this resource and rely on it. And so moving on to some talking points that you could use at that hearing, like I was touching on, you could discuss your connection to the Kootenai River and North Idaho in general, places that you want to see healthy and thriving. And talk about how great it was to see Montana take steps to protect the health of the Kootenai, which is so important for water quality, fish, human health, all of that good stuff. And another great point is that Teck is a Canadian mining company, and they're trying to overturn a U.S. law, and so the legality of that is very hazy, and that's a great point to bring up as well. And lastly, it's concerning that Montana is even willing to listen to Teck and their lobbyists instead of citizens like yourself that wish to see a clean, healthy Kootenai River, and of course, their Clean Water Act obligations to not exceed selenium limits in that watershed. So I know this was a fairly quick fly through, but yes, that's kind of a high level, understanding of what's going on with the Kootenai right now, and the public meeting opportunity we have coming up. And so I'd like to hear from you all now and see if you have any questions and kind of open it up for a conversation.
So everyone, feel free to type your questions in the chat box if you have any, or also feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. Just know that we're also broadcasting live on Facebook. So folks on Facebook will see your beautiful faces if you unmute yourself and ask out loud. So whatever you prefer, but jump in if you've got a question. Well, Stephen and Ellie, I have a question, and sorry if I missed this, but the meeting on Monday that we are asking folks to attend and to speak up and to use those talking points, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Mountain time. It's in Montana, so Mountain.
Yes, very good clarification, but yeah, 10 a.m. Mountain time on Zoom, very easy to hop on. They don't give a time limit, but, usually a couple minutes. Very, very simple to do and would be really impactful just to get those numbers up and use your voice.
Yeah, I think it's so important in this issue for Idaho to have a voice. And even though it's a Montana and even more so a Canadian process that's happening, but we are unfortunately just kind of sitting downstream of all of this. And so I think it's really important that Idaho stands up and has a voice in this. So. That's awesome. Thanks, Tess.
And Stephen mentioned this, but we will email everyone the link to the public meeting on Monday and those talking points as well, if you want to craft some sort of statement using those talking points. And I know Stephen and Ellie are standing by, and if you have questions while you're thinking about what you might want to say, they're here to help answer them. So yeah, I guess looks like Elizabeth has a question.
Yeah.
Is there another way to make a comment?
That's a great segue.
Can't make the meeting Monday.
Yeah, that's a great segue. I was just going to say that, Monday is obviously very close, so understandable if you can't make it, but kind of in the long term, the idea is that, yes, let's reaffirm these Montana water quality standards with selenium, but the next step is to hold Canada accountable and make sure that they're establishing those same protections for the Kootenai River, because that's where all this pollution is coming from. And so it's really an international issue. And there is, this treaty, I believe from the early 1900s, right, Ellie, called the Boundary Waters Treaty. And it basically says that, Canada can't, allow pollution to come over to the US border and vice versa, and kind of establishes a framework for each country holding the other one accountable. And so that's kind of where the work is now, is advocating towards the Canadian government to establish those standards. I don't know if you had any more to add to that, Ellie.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, you know, the Montana standards, like Stephen mentioned, they're so incredibly important, and we need to keep fighting to get those in place, but those are not going to prevent pollution from entering the US, unfortunately. And so that international framework that Stephen was mentioning is really important. And so a way that you all can get involved in the near future is writing to our federal government to ensure that they are doing everything they can to make sure that Canada is holding tech accountable. So that will be coming up in the next few months, that effort.
Yeah, that's great. And we can, provide you with some more specific contacts and all of that in a follow-up email if you're so interested.
Totally.
Thanks, you guys. I'll give everyone another minute to type in questions if you have any, but I also want to let you all know about some upcoming other river rat opportunities we will have in the next few months. Reese, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to talk about the Priest River for a quick second, feel free to turn your video on and I will know that. But we're going to be doing a river rat in February about the Priest River and some efforts that we are working on with some folks up there about restoring the priest. Oh, Reese, go ahead.
I'm here. Hi, thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Stephen and Ellie, for the update on the Kootenai River stuff. So yeah, as Caitlin mentioned, we are going to be hosting another river rat focused on the Priest River, basically from the outlet on Priest Lake down to the confluence of the Ponderay River. We're going to be joined by Hank Jones, who is an outfitter, fly fishing guide, kind of in that region on the Priest River and a few other areas around there. And he and a few citizens have organized a project there called the Priest River Project, which is basically sort of an information campaign to inform folks about studies that are happening to restore cold water into the lower Priest River to bring back our wild native fisheries there, cold water fisheries, including Endangered Species Act listed bull trout. So we are still working on setting the date here, but it's going to be in just a couple of weeks in February. So Caitlin will make sure to keep everybody updated, but I certainly encourage you to sign up once you see that email come out from Caitlin and join us to learn what's going on in the Priest River and just an opportunity to have a discussion and how to get involved. So thanks, hope to see you there.
Thanks, Reese. Okay, I think like we've mentioned, we will send a follow-up email this afternoon with a link to this recording, how to access that public meeting on Monday, and those talking points that Stephen and Ellie laid out for making public comment at the meeting. If you have any questions about anything regarding Kootenai or the Priest River or any of the work that IRU or I'm sure ICL does as well, any of us would be happy to answer it. So feel free to send us an email or call our office. Thank you all so much for coming and attending our first River Rat of 2022. More to come, and we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.